And welcome back to the next episode of the South Asia. Oh my god. Hey guys, and welcome. Oh. So first up, awesome. Thanks, dog. Now I'm gonna want, let yourself sort of go a bit wild. So first things first, let's talk about the route. So we ended up breaking up our trip in Thailand into 2 trips. So we tried and failed to get a long-term visa while we're in Malaysia. So we decided to actually take 30 days, leave the country and go to Myanmar, and then come back and do our second lot of 30 days. Because Thailand was such a large country and we had a lot of different destinations that we wanted to see while we were there, we knew that we couldn't physically do it all on a bike in the first 30 days. So we kind of stuck to that bottom south coast, headed over towards Myanmar, went up through Myanmar, and then came back in through the middle around Bangkok the second time we were in Thailand. So we ended up crossing over the border and heading to Pattalong, and then making our way across towards Krabi, and then to another small village called Kapu, which we have a family friend who actually lives there with his Thai wife. So that was another reason why we went to certain places, was because we knew that we had somewhere to stay. So our places to go. 2 of our top places were obviously places where we were hosted. And this has been sort of a trending thing in other countries that we've stayed with. Friends and family tend to be more of our favorite locations. They also tend to be sort of off the beaten track places to go. And therefore, I think it says a lot about the people in the country and the people in the region. Our number 1 place is Pattalong, and this place is very, very south. It's probably one of the main sort of towns that you come into when we were cycling after Hat Yai. We ended up staying with a Warm Showers host, and he had basically set up his whole house to host cyclists. Like, this place was amazing. It was called Chateau de Annie or something. Annie was the name of his wife, and it had a self-contained kitchen. He also had housemaids that worked there. So when we arrived, we were totally taken back by how set up he was to host people. He had breakfast made for us every morning. We went out for dinner with him and his friends and family, and they cooked for us. And I think we ended up staying there a total of about 3 days. They ended up giving us a massive tour of the area, and there was caves and temples and this great big beautiful lake that was there as well. And usually, we weren't there in the right season, but usually it's like covered, like absolutely full with these pink water lilies. It was a shame that it wasn't the right season, but we did miss out on that one. And there had been a lot of rain in the area, so some of the caves were actually flooded out, but we did see a massive area, and we saw the like old traditional fishermen and heaps of different things. And it was fantastic of them to, take time out of their lives to host other cyclists and take them around. And we really did get like a grand tour. Our second place was Kapu, and this was the small village that we stayed in just before we crossed over the Myanmar border. This is a village where a friend of my father lives, and we absolutely loved being there. A very, very small village and a very beautiful community. We ended up going to one of their community dinners because his wife sits on the political board over there, and we had a great big feast, and I mean like a giant feast. And there was Thai music and speeches, obviously, that we didn't understand at the time, but it was such a beautiful experience, and we had such a nice place to stay and a beautiful way of seeing the area and really getting to know where we were, and a side of Thailand that I think a lot of people don't get to see, which is a shame because it's such a beautiful country and the people there are so generous and so kind. And always laughing, and they always have smiles on their faces. And I think when you go to some of these really heavily touristy destinations, you miss out on that real genuine side of Thailand. So I will mention our place that we did not like. We ended up heading across towards Krabi because we had plans to meet someone and go rock climbing with them. When we did get to the area, we quickly realized that it was not really our scene. There was a lot of white, drunk, sunburnt tourists, and the price of food had absolutely skyrocketed. There was nowhere to camp, and we pretty much hightailed it straight out of there and cycled off after managing to find somewhere to camp on a football oval. Anyway, we cycled out and made our way quickly back into our more comfortable zone of Thailand. Okay, so let's talk about some of the places that we managed to sleep while we were in Thailand. We had heard from a couple of other cyclists that it's actually really easy to sleep at temples, and they were right. I think one of our first nights that we stayed in Thailand, we actually did stay at a temple, and this became a continuing trend. It was very easy to spot them. It was very easy to ask the monks if we were able to camp there. Because we did have our own sleeping gear, this was possible. I'm sure that if you didn't have your own place to stay, that they wouldn't have spare beds for you. I will just say though that the temples are always crawling with stray dogs, as it is in their Buddhist faith to look after all creatures great and small. So they're always offering food, which tends to be a sort of an attracting place for stray cats and stray dogs. The monks were always very, very humble and always wanting to ask us questions and share their ideas, and always up for a good chat. Sometimes we would also feast and eat with the monks, and they had shown us how to pray and other things like that as well. So staying at temples became very easy, but also a beautiful experience that we had while we were in Thailand. We managed to stay with warm showers. We managed to stay with family friends. We also went to Koh Phangan, one of the islands off the coast of Thailand, and this is known to be a pretty party, touristy, expensive area, and we managed to camp at a naked beach for, I think it was about 2 weeks. So for about 2 weeks we lived on a naked beach and camped there, and we're managing to keep our costs low while still being able to be in a touristy area. Oh my god, this was like how to survive a scooter while in Thailand. This was the craziest experience, and it made me so thankful that we had decided to ride bicycles when we were in Thailand. We had hired this scooter, and we were going down these roads, and they started getting steeper, and they were going down faster and up like slower. They were getting really, really steep. And instead of a scooter just like dying and conking out on the side of the road and you're like crap, and like you just hitchhike or, you know, walk back to the village or, you know, sort it out, it went the complete opposite. And the accelerator got stuck on, which was fine when we were going up these really steep hills, but then all of a sudden we would go down, and it was so steep, and the accelerator was stuck on, and we would get really, really fast. And I mean like speed wobbles fast. Like these scooters are old, probably not maintained or serviced that well, and cheap. And I feel like you would think I was lying to you, but the rear brakes also didn't work. So we only had a front brake. And if you're going that fast, you can't use your front brake because then you sort of like top over the front. It was so scary, and we ended up getting up to this hill and using the amount of speed that we lost getting up this steep hill, and we sort of like tipped the scooter onto the side and jumped ourselves off, and the wheel was like spinning in the air. I literally thought like, oh my god, what just happened? I couldn't believe that we had just had to jump, like thrown ourselves onto the side of the road to get off this scooter that wouldn't turn off. And every time you turned it on, it would just like, it would take off. Like we had to try and get the key out while the wheel was still spinning. It was so crazy, I couldn't believe it. So that was our experience of scooters, and never again. We literally just like stuck to the bikes. That was it, done. The food that we had while we were in Thailand probably averaged out to about $12 a day. It was a little bit more expensive than that $8 or $9 mark that we were making in Malaysia. Similar sort of mark that we had while we were in Indonesia, in Sumatra. But Thailand was that little bit more expensive, and I think it was a mixture of being in populated areas and being in those touristy areas, because it was still quite cheap food. We always stick and eat the local food because we know that that's always cheaper, and we do tend to eat a lot of street food to keep those costs down. We would normally eat for breakfast a rice soup, and that came with like bits of minced pork, an egg, ginger, lemongrass, salt, pepper and chili, and they were delicious. We went to this like little old man who had a stall, and he would make a certain amount in the morning, and once it was run out, it was run out. But it was super, super cheap, and there was always Thai people stopping on their motorbikes on the way. I think we only ever saw a couple of other tourists or foreigners eating that for breakfast, but it was quickly one of our favorites. And we ended up actually learning how to order it in Thai, which we loved doing, and playing with the language and learning new words. And by the time we'd left the island, within the 2 weeks, we had nailed how to say it. So I actually wanted to mention about hitchhiking in Thailand, and this is something that we actually did quite a few times. It is super, super easy to hitchhike in Thailand, even with the bikes. Lots and lots of people drive utes, and we were able to throw the bikes in the back and skip a lot of highway where there was no food, no shade, just hot weather, nowhere to camp, and we were able to cycle in the places where we actually wanted to cycle. We hitchhiked up really steep mountain passes. We also hitched into Bangkok so we could avoid kilometers and kilometers of traffic. I don't know if anyone has driven or cycled into Bangkok before, but there's like rings, so it just goes on for kilometers and kilometers and gets busier and busier and denser as you go in. So we actually hitchhiked with a family, and they ended up stopping along the way and buying us this massive feast, and we sat down with them all, and yeah, it was just so fantastic. Again, like, I've only ever had amazing experiences. Every time we hitchhike, I always have beautiful experiences with the people, their stories, meeting their family, eating their food, and it always seems like a really genuine way to see a country. Again, always use caution, do not take my word for it, but it's a fantastic way to meet the people that live in the country that you're traveling. Another time when we were hitchhiking, we were actually picked up by an ex-soldier or a commander or something, and we were taken back to the army base. And I remember looking at Yasser and being like, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into? Have we done something illegal? Are we getting into trouble? He ended up taking us back to the army base with our bikes, fed us, gave us coffee and tea and all of these treats and things. And then he basically ordered his soldiers to take us in their truck with our bikes in a separate car. And they basically escorted us all the way to the Cambodian border, where we crossed over to our next country. We were basically treated like royalty. We stayed a night at his like private ranch, I guess you would say. And we were able to sleep in one of his hotel rooms that he had. It was like a steakhouse, and he said we could order dinner for free. It was like the weirdest experience. But yes, every time we hitchhike, it's always an experience, and it's always amazing and hilariously funny, and always worth it. Now the last little section is the visas. So we were able to get a 30-day visa on arrival when we crossed over from Malaysia. Then we left for Myanmar, where we had a 28-day visa, and then we entered back into Thailand and were granted with another 30 days, which was also free on arrival. We did try to organize, like I said in my Malaysia video, we did try to organize a longer term visa so that we could stay in Thailand for a longer period of time, but instead we ended up adjusting our route to accommodate the time that we were allowed and other countries that we wanted to see. I knew that we really wanted to see Myanmar, so I didn't really mind splitting up our trip in Thailand into 2 lots and having Myanmar sort of squished in there in the middle. Hey guys, it's Editing Casey here, and yes, I edit in my pajamas. I just realized that I had forgotten to film an outro again, but if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really supports my channel, and make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in our next video. Bye!